Well, hello and good evening. That's a rousing start, isn't it? Thank you for being here this evening. I'm going to be as brief as possible. My personal wish is to invite you to join our community in a meaningful and profound way. And I'm going to be putting a case to you tonight to promote Portugal as a safe, sociable, and sane place to live. I'm going to show you that despite impending and radical global changes, which I think most people feel are in the air, I believe Portugal's prospects are good. And I'm going to suggest how to become involved in society here to maintain this relatively excellent way of life for the future. So something a little bit different, not your usual Good Morning Portugal output. It's 9 o'clock in the evening or soon after 9 here in Portugal. Keep your comments coming in the chat. Good to see you, Tom and the Nano. Yes, this is live just after 9, 6 minutes past 9 here in Portugal. So if you have any questions at any point, you've seen a little preview of the presentation. It's not that many slides. And I would like to be away from here. I'm sure you've got other things to do as well. I'd like to be away from here within 30 minutes or so. So let's get underway. So Portugal, the safe, sociable, and sane destination to live in. These things are all relative, of course, and increasingly so is my contention this evening. Now, up to this point, I'm going to be talking about the period pre-COVID crisis, during the COVID crisis, and what's happening next, because I think we're poised on the edge of something quite different and possibly stressful and challenging for humanity. And I'm positioning Portugal as a very good place to be to face that. Up to this point, up until the end of last year, pretty much these were the issues, were they not, that people were concerned with. Security and safety, where Portugal has always ranked well. Economics and wealth, personal wealth, and of course the golden visa. And you'll see the slide for this particular presentation is the golden visa been changed. NHR tax regime being axed. So what next? And I mean what next, not in the broadest sense, not what is the latest economic or wealth management based aspect of moving to Portugal that's going to be changed, but in the broadest sense, what else might be changing and how might we be changing in order to live, to continue to live a great life here in Portugal. Health and well-being, always very important to people, of course, when considering a new location. Community and sociability, of course, for which the Portuguese are prized. And this order is in no particular order here. These bullet points are in no particular order. They are all important things. And do shout out if you think I've missed any. By all means, do let me know and I'll include them and we'll discuss them this evening. And of course, ease at the beginning of the whole process, the ease of entry and residency. And I've got a photograph to share with you this evening, talking of ease of entry and residency. The current situation, and we'll come back to this, that was outside IMA, CEF's new replacement. 100 people in front of the Gumper from our community who took this picture, and 100 people behind them. And they queued up to make an appointment, I think at 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe even earlier before the office opened. That's why they're queuing. And when they got in, they couldn't get one of the appointments that was available, having queued up and wasted all of their time there. So not a good look, and part of the changing patterns that we're experiencing here in Portugal. So there you go: security and safety, economics and wealth, health and well-being, community and sociability, ease of entry and residency, and obviously ultimately citizenship as well. Key considerations up to this point, and things are changing, are they not? Now, one of the important things to me to state is that, no, obviously, I will remind you about, is that nowhere is perfect on this planet. And if you let the excellent spoil the good, you'll probably not move anywhere. Let's not kid ourselves. There are difficulties and challenges with how some aspects of Portuguese life work and how I see this. I've written about this in the Portugal Resident newspaper. For me, it's a Pareto principle, 80-20. And this is actually what you're seeing in the colors of the Portuguese flag on your screen there, is a bar chart. And this is how I see it. Quality of life, 80%. It's, you know, that I'm here because most of the time, 80% of my time, I believe I'm enjoying a good quality of life. And of course, wherever we live in the world, modern human beings have to face an amount of, or quantity of hassle, I've called it. It's quality versus quantity. Quality of life ranking at 80% on this very broad brush a non-scientific bar chart, but this is my assertion. This is my opinion about Portuguese life. 80% quality and the 20% of occasional quantity of hassle, these bureaucratic, challenging things that you have to do here. You have to do them everywhere, of course, wherever you live in the world. But that's how I would rank it. And the problem is, of course, is when you're bogged down in that 20% of the red there on that bar chart, of my rough bar chart there, it feels like it's taking over 80% of your life. So these are not nice positions to be in when you're in that queue, for example, as a member of our community was this morning. And these things are not going to be improving anytime soon. We need to make that clear as well. But we need to remember, or I would ask you to remember, quality versus quantity. Quality of life, I would say, is 80%, and quantity of hassle is about 20%. It's not hassle-free. There are bugbears and challenges and difficulties, as there will be in any country, and that's just about how I have it currently in Portugal. And like I say, these things are going to change. So with those in mind, if we just click back to those, those 5 markers there, let me just check in your comments to see if I've missed anything. Hi, Tom, Naunu, Leela, and yes, well said, Facebook user, it's important how each person defines hassle. Of course, all of this is subjective and relative, and of the 80-20, Lee saying it's well worth the effort. Thank you for that, Lee. And Vicky, just quickly there, I would bump that quality of life percentage to 90%. Thank you, Vicky. Wonderful. And Bob and Viva here, sometimes the quantity of hassle does seem unnecessary. No online booking, yeah, and queuing up on the street. Fair enough. Thank you for your comments. This is not all my subjective opinion tonight, mostly, but we're getting some great input and other people's opinions as well. So that's fantastic. Okay, so this came out, I think, in the last few days. Our man in the Minho, Antonio Barbosa, was telling us about this, and this is on our homepage at the moment. And Portugal has been knocked from number one spot, based as International Living do this survey on housing, cost of living, visa benefits, affinity rating. Is that the sociability community? I'm not sure. I don't really know a lot about International Living, but I'm happy to take this token survey as good news. Certainly, Portugal's ranking highly, isn't it? Top 3, top 2 here. It's getting silver. It had gold last year, and Costa Rica has just knocked it off the top spot. And they're averaging 83.57 and 83.2. So it's a close thing as well. And also involved in that are development and healthcare. Cost of land is a big plus as well. Lee McGrady's chipping in with that. And Tom Smith adding, we also have to keep in mind that perception is not reality. For example, the homicide rate in the United States had one of its biggest drops last year, even though most people think it's rising. Yeah, well said. Thank you for that, Tom. Okay, onward then with our presentation here. And this, I think Lee might like this. This is what I think, if very broadly, roughly again, this is what's gone on. I've known as a bit of a Portuguese Pollyanna, and certainly in my first few years here, I wouldn't have anything bad said about the place, and I wouldn't talk down about it or negatively. And I've become a bit more pragmatic and realistic. And world events have helped to make me a little bit more cynical and hardened as well. So we're seeing a transition here. We've got the pandemic COVID crisis in the middle there, the years 2020 to, roughly speaking, the end of last year and the aftermath. And then projecting back to the financial crisis of 2008, for me, from that time when I was first interested in Portugal, these are the Sound of Music years, just the open pasture, the hills are alive, and twirling through the landscape there, not a care in the world. And we get to 2020 and 2023, and now I think we have to, with what's going on in the world, 50 elections next year, around the world in key leading countries. It's going to be this year, 2024, 50 general elections, and in big nations around the world. And there's no new normal, is there? With the new normal is weird. And there's all sorts of challenges for us, human beings on planet Earth. And as you can see there, there's a financial crisis, 2008, up to that crisis, COVID crisis period. And now let's look forward, as we might change personality now to a somewhat more useful Lara Croft. So from Maria Van Trappishi, we've got Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music there, changing more into the preparedness and resilience of Lara Croft, a motif that I will return to later in this presentation. Okay, but that's my distinction. That's a change that's happening for me, and a change that I would advise in attitude for those of you looking at this as well. So going forward then, what can we say about these key issues that I put forward up to 23? Security and safety, economics and wealth, health and well-being, community and sociability, ease of entry, residency. Let's go through those one by one. Let's start with the last one. I think ease of entry and residency in Portugal is going to get more difficult. No question about that. And you saw the earlier photograph of the queue outside IMA. You know, CEF is extinguished. It's become IMA. There's a massive backlog of work. Portugal is increasingly more popular. It's a perfect storm for delays, inefficiency, frustration, and some really awful mistakes and processing problems that vary, not only the Portuguese border, but when people are traveling and they may not have the right documents. It's a mess, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon, quite honestly. Community and sociability, it's one of the great things about Portugal, and you could assume, could you not, notwithstanding the pressure of immigration here in Portugal, which I think is connected obviously with ease of entry and residency and the amount of people coming to the country, notwithstanding some of the challenges that might bring to Portugal's sense of family and community life, it might be that you know, global blitz spirit, with the continuation of challenges for humanity around the world, people become more tightly knit. It might amplify, exaggerate how community based and sociable Portugal is. That's my hope anyway. And I'm going to say more about how actually we shouldn't just be viewers and consumers of this. We need to take part in it as well. That's a key message that I want to get across this evening. Health and well-being. It's no secret that the health service here, though better than most around the world, is in a lot of trouble. And there is a great deal of unhappiness and great waiting lists. And though relatively good as a national health system, in Europe and probably around the world, it is facing its challenges, and just like ease of entry and residency, it is under challenge, and I think too it will only get worse with health and well-being. Just telling you how I think it is and how we might prepare for that. Economics and wealth, well, of course, if Portugal existed in isolation, fair enough, but it doesn't. It's an EU country. It tends to dance. Who pays the piper calls the tune, and the tune is called by the EU, and Portugal tends to dance to that. And of course, the EU itself is subject to whatever strings are being pulled in the global economy. Portugal can't escape those, can it? Let's face it. I think it occupies, if it can be a good place, if it could be seen as a good place, it's in this kind of slipstream. It doesn't experience the worst of these of economic phenomena first. It tends to take a while for it's trickle down. It's the worst aspect of trickle down, isn't it? As cost of living escalates, it takes time for that to reach Portugal. It gets here, of course. We live in a globalized world where things happen very quickly around the world. So that too, like the other couple of factors I've mentioned, I think it's going to get worse. I think the global picture economically, you know, in the worst case scenarios, and I don't want to sound too doom-mongery or conspiratorial, but many people are thinking we're, you know, poised on a tipping point of some sort of economic collapse, generally depression style, and of course, Portugal won't be able to immunize or isolate itself from the effects of that. It might be a better place in which to suffer that, arguably. That's how I see it, but it won't be able to escape the global effect of a downturn or continuing struggles when it comes to the economic situation of the world, cost of living, and so on. And security and safety, of course, this global threat and sense of war. Again, Portugal can't be immune from that or isolate itself, although it was neutral in the Second World War. It is again, as part of the EU, it tends to follow, and by the grace of God, geography and a number of other factors, it tends to enjoy a peaceful place or relationship to conflict in the world over on this side of the European continent. Let me just have a quick cough and a sip of water. Okay, just a little bit of a sip of water out of my new Bayral glass that I got at Christmas. Mm, marvelous. Okay, so those are those key features that are really important to migrants, expats, foreigners, call them what you will. I want to use the term expat 2.0 tonight to show what I think is going to be useful, how the orientation of a migrant, how their attitude might change, and how that might be useful in the coming years. So expat 2.0 for me. But there's my assessment of the key issues, how they're going to change. I think they're all going to get worse, quite frankly. Globally, they're going to get worse. And the wonderful thing about being in Portugal, it's relatively better, easier. The quality of life is good here, compared to other places. It's a relatively good place to be when all of these horrible things are going on in the world. I can't think of any better way of putting it. That's my sort of Lara Croft head on there, rather than my Julie Andrews head. Factors such as, it's a baby boomer country predominantly. There's going to be a lot of old folks that need looking after. There are going to be fewer young folks working to look after them, either directly or through paying taxes. Apparently, by 2080, the population will have dropped to 2/3 of what it is now. You know, these are global phenomena, and Portugal can't escape these things. We just have to keep our heads up and guess and take a look at what might be going on and adjust our sails accordingly, to meet those global winds. Uh, if I give you a little bit of insight, and I know this is very anecdotal, but this too, adding to the picture of what might happen, how people are feeling here. These are a couple of comments from the YouTube channel. Portugal is undergoing third worldification, says Dissonantia Cognitiva 7438, the abolishment of SEF, Services for Immigration and Borders, and replacement with some entity whose name is something asylum, something asylum and integration, is a definite conspiracy against the natives of Portugal. The big replacement conspiracy is an epoch, not a theory, and moves like this prove it. Quite a dark view there from Dissonantia Cognitiva, cognitive dissonance there, of course. And Super Silkwood says Portugal is good for traveling, not for living reasons, is their assessment. Housing crisis, extremely corrupted government, healthcare system. Let me go through these one by one and see if I agree. Housing crisis, yes, check. There's no getting away from that. Extremely corrupted government. Corruption, I think we can check that. Extremely is a subjective view, but it's not without its corruption allegations. Healthcare system collapsing, I've already addressed that. Yes, check. Slow bureaucracy, yes. Slow, almost dead. Slow immigration agency, check. Yes. Racist, xenophobic government employees. Now, I don't know about that, but I do know that with the amount of people moving to Portugal, it's something we need to talk about. It's something we need to face up to. We can't be Julie Andrews about this and just think of a few of our favorite things. We've got to go Lara Croft on this and go practical, pragmatic, and deal with it. So xenophobia, racism, and the tensions that will occur from mass migration. I think we've got to grow up and take a look at these things. And we will. That's my recommendation. Exploitation of non-EU immigrant workers. Check, it's happening. I've seen it with my own eyes. So it's not a pretty picture I'm painting, but bear with. It's not all. Well, it is partly gloom and doom, but I think we need to address it and do something about it. And as I said before, these are things that other countries are not without. This is not. It's not as if these things are happening in isolation here in Portugal and they're not happening anywhere else in the rest of the world. But Super Silkwood, I can't disagree with you, as you've expressed yourself on our YouTube channel. These things, they say, affect your day-to-day life, especially inefficient migration agency, which can take up to 2 years to grant you your resident permit. Okay, fair comment then. So I was talking about, with Julie Andrews and Maria von Trapp, she'd have just, thought about a few of her favorite things, and things really aren't so bad. Not a strategy that I think is going to work in these times post-COVID crisis and moving forward in this year of 2024. A quote not from The Sound of Music, but from Tomb Raider is, "The extraordinary is in what we do, not who we are." And I want to say more about this. We're going to have to be doers. Being an expat, being a foreigner, being an immigrant coming to Portugal, I think the door has closed. The days are over of it being a consumer experience. perhaps, unless you're super wealthy, that will be the case wherever you choose to move in the world. I think the strategy now is to move somewhere and get involved. It's about what you're going to do when you get there rather than just being a passive consumer of the good conditions that exist in a country. Unless, of course, like I said, you're super rich and you can gate yourself away. Not something I'm recommending or approve of, for that matter, for what it's worth. I think most of the rest of us here are people who will be integrated, engaged, and want to have a meaningful part in society and to any place we move to. And that's why this is a key, and only a quote I only found out about tonight whilst putting this presentation together. The extraordinary is in what we do, not who we are. So it doesn't really matter whether we call ourselves an immigrant, a foreigner, an expat, a cowpat, whatever. The important thing, I think, for the future here is who we are being, how we are being, and what we do as our contribution to this society. I think it's vitally important. Before I go to the next slide, let me just have a look at what's being said here. Thank you for your lots of contributions and quite a few people watching. Not everyone said hello. Do say hello if you will. We've got Angel here. Thank you for being here. Are the lines long because everybody is rushing to catch the tail end of the NHR? No, they want appointments. The appointments are few and far between. This is what Angel's talking about, the queues in Lisbon this morning for an appointment. For most people in that queue, they're not going to be getting an appointment. Go check with Mummy, please, Solomon. Thank you very much. So that's why the lines are long, because people are queuing up just to get an appointment. They're not queuing up to have an appointment. They're queuing up to get an appointment. And most people went away disappointed. It's a miserable picture. That is an embarrassment for Portugal. I don't mind saying that. It's not a good look. Okay, Angel, so it's not at the NHR. That would be with finances anyway, rather than IMA. It could be a line of people unable to get appointments online, so try and walk in. You're absolutely right, Nanu. And Angel from Bob and Viv. Not necessarily. Okay, everyone's helping you, Angel, there. In Portugal, you can come on a tourist visa and apply for residency. There are 350,000 such people waiting for their residency card. It's a lot of people, isn't it? IMA said they will clear this CEF backlog in 7 months, and then said 1.5 years. So that gives us more of the richer picture of what's going on. And we need to leave the country for a family memorial this spring, says Bob and Viv. Our residency expires after we leave, but we're unable to renew it at this point, still working on it. But you will be able to move in and out on your American passports, presumably. Ross, the office list on the online appointments for renewals is shrinking by the week. So imagine people are taking to their feet. I'll be driving my tank through the front. Wouldn't recommend that, Ross. But thank you for your contributions and for being here tonight. My goodness, there's a lot here. I hear you, Bob and Viv. Mine ran out in October and I've been unable to travel since. Can you not travel back and forth on your original country of origin passport? Andrew, if your residency card expired before December 31st, 23, you can renew automatically on the CEF website. People started receiving their cards today already. So they haven't been coming out, but it sounds like for Andrew, well, he's got a bit of information there that they are on the move. I did this, still awaiting my card though. Okay. When the proverbial hits the fan, it's a pretty good place to be. That's the quote of the evening so far. Thank you, Lee. I heard from multiple sources that if you want to leave Portugal on an expired residency, then you can go to IMA, tell them your reason for leaving and get a written document that you can use while coming back. Presumably you need an appointment now for that, and then you have to queue up for that one. Interesting. I did mine back in November, but assumed it was not working as nothing received. What did you? Okay, this is great. Thank you for helping each other out in the chat. This is good stuff. Well done. Bob and Viv and Ross, I think, having a chat about the renewal of documents there. Please keep helping each other in the comments. That's wonderful. Unfortunately, I think most people here don't live in the real Portugal. That's an interesting comment, Lee. Debbie Diver is here. Hello from Florida. Looking forward to my May arrival. Well, come to our meetup. Come and say hello on the Wednesday of every week here on the Silver Coast. Thanks for everybody's reply. So great help. This is what we're about here. Thank you very much. Andrew, I surely hope you're correct, says Bob and Viv. That is the old man, and we cannot log into CEF at all anymore. Horrible. There is much growing animosity directed at expat blame game. Thank you, Scott. Yes, that also is a thing. We cannot ignore that, but we can do something about it. So what do we do? How can we bring a bit of Julie Andrews back into and the sound of music back into our lives for the future? Okay, this is well, I'm going to play you a little video now. This is what I've posted up on our homepage at Good Morning Portugal, and this is the cut of our jib for how we've decided to be for the year ahead. And I think as well, this is really this is where we want to position ourselves for the long future. You know, my invitation to you tonight, as I said, is to become part of our community. I'm not really interested in clickbait, in big numbers on YouTube. I get an email or a message every other day on WhatsApp. Sir, I can help your videos get more views. You know what? I'm not interested in a massive YouTube channel with loads of subscribers. I very rarely ask people to like or subscribe. I'm not interested in that particularly. What I'm interested in is building a community for the long term here in Portugal. My videos are not about should you come to Portugal or should you go to Costa Rica or somewhere else. They are about loving life here in Portugal, as you'll see in just a moment, and the long term. You know, I want to be here and I want my kids to have a future here. So my invitation to you is for us to create a network and a community together for the long term. I'm not looking for your subscription or your likes or anything like that right now. Far from it. Something more important. So this is the cut of our jib for 2024. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our mission for the year ahead here. So as we enter a new year of daily broadcasting and serving the Good Morning Portugal community, it's a good opportunity for us to review and simplify our intentions for the next 12 months. From our beginnings as an English language emergency information service during Portugal's COVID crisis, remember those days? Some of you were here. We have grown and evolved into a daily focal point for people who have a passion for Portugal, whether living here, visiting, or considering it as a home. We remain funded by professional consultancy fees, crowd-funded support, and subscriptions. Mwah, 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 to all of you who do that. Sponsorship and affiliate relationships, a model that has helped us maintain independence and build resilience, allowing us to focus on our key aims, which are connecting with more people, places, and products that represent and celebrate the wonder and flavour of Portuguese life. Number one for us, love Portugal. And 2 projects, talking of impats, cowpats, expats, foreigners, and immigrants. We want to develop the Portugal Immigrant Network further this year and also develop the Expat Angel. That's the supporting Portuguese entrepreneurs. That project as well. Key aim for us this year. 23 was a great year where we also continued to host meetups, launched our Discovery Weekends, and decided, of course, that included the Englishmen, the Irishmen, and whoever else we met on our travels. And we decided to become a Portuguese company, which we're in the process of doing. And of course, inspired, supported, and encouraged countless people to take a look at and enjoy the life we love here. So there you go. There's a little bit about Good Morning Portugal for 2024. Let's remove that off the screen and give the fellas in Lisbon a nice big round of applause. Right, we're not going to the fellas in Lisbon. We're going to come back to the presentation this evening. And there it is. So just to reiterate, we're going to be connecting with more people, places, and products. That's what we're about on the Daily Show, that represent and celebrate the wonder and flavour of Portuguese life. It's really important. That's the 80%, folks. And these 2 other projects, which I want to share with you tonight, that are part of our Portugal Club, they are things that I think are important for the future here. The Expat Angel project, where we want to support Portuguese entrepreneurs, young business people. It doesn't have to be young, actually, but probably those of a new and young disposition, attitude towards doing business here in Portugal and creating a business. And, of course, the Portugal Immigrant Network, which addresses your comment, Scott. There is much growing animosity directed at expats, the blame game. Okay, let's go through this then. And I've just talked to you about those 3 key points for us as Good Morning Portugal. There it is. So to address this point you make, Scott, there is much growing animosity directed at expats. I think there's more. And I understand it. I really do. And my view about this, and I began to talk about the Portugal Immigrant Network over a year ago, I think. It's been in the air for quite a long time. And I think this is the year we really need to sort it out and start reaching out to all the other immigrant groups here in Portugal and to Portuguese people to talk about their, who was it who was saying earlier on, you know, perception is not reality. There is a perception that foreigners drive up property prices, which in some way is true, but it's usually a Portuguese person selling them the property as well. So Portuguese people are driving the prices up by selling the properties too. And I think a lot of it is misunderstanding. And so much of this, I think, could be addressed by people communicating rather than just becoming polar very quickly and never even talking to each other. So I'm going to do all I can to encourage these conversations. We've had a few, and we've spoken to somebody from the Nepal. I mean, you might say big deal. We've spoken to a few immigrants, but it's a good start. We've spoken to somebody from the Nepalese community, from the, oh my goodness, the Iranian community. We mainly stick to people in our own groups, don't we? But I would urge any of you, all of you, to reach out to other immigrants and find out why they're here and work together to help Portuguese people understand why we're coming into their country and in such massive numbers. It's because we love it, and for most of us, I think we want to make a contribution, and we can't really articulate that until we start having conversations with the local people, with the native people. Well, P is here tonight. We just want to come over and check out all the lovely Portuguese people, expats, and wonderful flora and fauna. We're waiting for you. Andrew says, I'm a Seth, informações, dúvidas e ajamentos. This Facebook group has daily updates from others who are dealing with IMA. I hope that helps. Thank you, Andrew. That's brilliant. And can't wait to come to a meetup. As I say, OLP, we are waiting for you. And Bob and Viv finding that useful. So that's a key project. If you like the sound of that, get involved. We have to move on from being consumers and viewers and voyeurs. We need to get involved in things, don't we, if we think they're a good idea? And I think our future here depends on it, quite frankly. The other idea that I mentioned there, Expat Angels, this is to help young Portuguese entrepreneurs. There's a wealth of knowledge. I mean, there's investment money that expats might come with to put into young Portuguese entrepreneurial projects. But there's also all that corporate knowledge, isn't there? All that experience. These are people who've retired perhaps from consulting careers. They might be able to help the young Portuguese entrepreneurs who are up against it, quite frankly. This is a culture in which the merchant class isn't entirely worshipped. It's difficult to start a business. It's difficult to run a business. And I think the entrepreneur is not the most respected member of society, as you might think it is here, as it is in the United States, for example. So I think this is a useful project to get involved in. And I, again, invite you to do so as part of our work as the Portugal Club. So what can you do then, just to conclude this evening? And thank you, Lee. I'm glad to hear that. I've not faced any issues being an expat. And it might be, excuse me a minute, it might be that you're a really good example, Lee, of what happens when you're open and connected to people who you come across in your daily life. You have a business here. You are part of the community. You're part of a local community. You're part of you've got a blended family. I don't know what better way to put it, but you are a multiracial, a multicultural family, aren't you? Which I think helps. And you've done a lot to connect with one of the points I want to make here in conclusion this evening. So, or you tell me, that's my guess about you. I think you're always open for a chat and to connect with people. And I think that goes a long way. Investment attitude. So this is what I was saying from before, that the old expat, and the reason why I think people don't like the word expat is because it's somebody who comes to take advantage, isn't it, at the expense of others, quite possibly, of a better lifestyle, expatriated from their place of origin and coming to enjoy a better quality of life in the new place, not necessarily connecting, just suiting themselves, taking advantage of the situation and being a consumer and really not much of an investor, if you like. And I mean having an investment attitude here, and that switch from being what can I get from the country to what I can give. I mean that in the broadest sense. Not everybody has thousands or millions to invest financially. But I think there's a big distinction between the people who want to invest themselves and those who just want the best out of it for themselves. The people who are not coming anymore because of the golden visa changes or the NHR. From my point of view, if that's stopping you coming here, then fair enough, and perhaps good riddance. There's a lot more to it than that. And if that's what put you off, then fair enough. Go somewhere else where it suits you better. But I mean investment here from the point of view of an investment mindset. What can you give? What can you put in? What can you help grow in this culture in these coming years? I think it's a really important change of heart and change of mind to think of it more in that way. Which means, of course, it's like the Julie Andrews, Sound of Music. Those days of skipping through the valley, through the pasture, eating pastel de natas and coffee, drinking coffee all day, and a gin and tonic in the evening. You might need to give way to people who are active in the community and not just gorging themselves at the expense of others, perhaps, but getting involved in local business and local society, national society, even national business, and changing your mindset from what can I get to what can I give. So why not, in that case, come here and instead of relying on a retirement pot, and dare I be the harbinger of doom again, but if there's going to be a financial collapse, what's going to happen to pension pots and all the things that people are relying on to pay out? There are no guarantees with these things, so it may be beneficial, of course, to have a productive and business-like mindset. Rather than one where you're just thinking, okay, well, I've done my bit, and I'm just going to draw the money now until it's all gone. Perhaps we need to be a bit more resourceful and, like I said before, investment minded about this. Why not make lots of money here and pay lots of tax rather than take the view of, how can I minimize these things? Because I've got some bad news for a lot of people. The way that things happen here is you can fall foul of the Portuguese government and its finances department, who will fine you, who will ask you for tax, and they tend to get the last word, funnily enough. So I think again, another shift here. We need to move away from the minimization and the shrinking approach around money into a more expansive one, into a growth mindset. Have a surplus from which the taxes and the inevitable fines can be paid. That is a fact of Portuguese life. There's no getting away from it. I don't know any foreigners, expats, immigrants here who haven't fallen foul in some way. It didn't go quite as planned with their NHR and their tax arrangements and those sorts of things. And you do need to have contingency with that sort of stuff. And if you're living on the margin, I think that's going to become an even more difficult and challenging thing to do in these coming years. So why not think about investment from that financial point of view, and think about, well, okay, I'm going to earn loads of money here in Portugal. There are some opportunities if I orient my mind to that. There are businesses that need investment. I might start a business myself, or I might start a company to hold my assets here and take a more business approach than a retirement approach, and pay tax to this society that I want to be part of, and perhaps improve its prospects with the health service and so on. Two other things which go hand in hand really are building community and networks. Again, this is a change, isn't it, from expat 2.0, the person who lives in their own castle. An Englishman's home is his castle, and we have some of my countrymen who come here and they don't mix, and they like their castle, and they like to be in there. And they like to be living a separate life. I'm not sure that's a way forward, especially if things get challenging in society. I think it's very important to build community as a foreigner coming to Portugal. Not just the next point is integrating locally. I think that's really important. But what I mean by building community is building networks. Not so much geographically, although do it geographically as well, but build community of like minds, of interest groups. It's so easy to do that online, of course, as well, but make connections with people. You can't eat gold, but you can get helped by people from any community building and the social capital that you develop. I think that's the phrase, isn't it? Social capital. It's really important to build social capital rather than. And I understand how it can be isolating to be a foreigner as well, and it can be difficult. You might not want to hang out with expats, but I would make an extra effort and go against the flow of isolation and definitely build community, build networks, and of course, integrate locally as well. Learn a bit of the language or find a way of communicating. A lot is made of, learn Portuguese, which I think is an important thing to do, but it's not a great thing to get your knickers in a twist about. The important thing is to be able to communicate, and that might be with the help of a translator or a Portuguese friend, but that's all part of the integration. And these things work in spirals or directions of travel, don't they? It's either getting better for you in this regard, or it's not. and you know whether it's getting better or it's getting worse. So please build community, build networks, integrate locally, learn how to communicate locally, get help with that. If your Portuguese isn't great, make Portuguese friends who will help you. And this is an important one. Parallel systems. I'm not entirely sure what to say about this, but this is something that Václav Havel, who was part of the revolution in Czechoslovakia, as I understand it, in 1989, the Velvet Revolution there, overthrowing communism in Czechoslovakia. It was keen for the revolutionaries and the people in the resistance of the Velvet Revolution to build alternative systems. And I guess this goes hand in hand with building community and integrating locally, doesn't it? Is to build systems. So an example here might be health, for example, in a ailing health system in a health system with health problems of its own. It might be worth building alternative health systems, broadening your approach. You know, the whole sort of pharmaceutical methodology of health seems to be hugely expensive and not entirely geared towards. It's around symptoms, isn't it, rather than causes, or it's not really about vitality or well-being. It's more about slapping, some sort of cure on the symptoms. I think it's really important these times to build parallel systems in health. So, start to take a responsibility for your own health. Work with holistic, complementary health practitioners. And the same is true of food, isn't it? A huge reliance on supply chains, logistics, supermarkets, and so on. It's very convenient, but we might have parallel systems developing in terms of food supply as well. I'm sure Lee has something to say about that. So parallel systems, it could be in education, it could be in health, it could be in food. But I think an over-reliance on the government, on the state, is probably not that wise. And I'm not suggesting you run to the hills with beans and bullets. I'm certainly not. I'm all about cooperation and collaboration. And I think we do need parallel systems that will be built locally and will be built by the community as a complement to the government and state systems, because that seems to be a pattern around the world, isn't it? The state, the government, our expectations of it are, how can I put this? They are, those forces are coming up wanting, lacking, aren't they? And one approach would be just to constantly criticize and be negative about the lack of provision and the crumbling systems of health, education, and infrastructure, or maybe do something about it on a parallel basis. I'm not sure if I've explained that very well, but I think some people will get the gist of what I'm saying there. Okay, let's go back over some of your comments. I'm going to draw a close. I didn't want to be here this long, actually, at 9:45 in the evening. I wanted to be in and out in about 30 minutes. But let's just see what's going on here, because I don't want to cut anyone else off who wants to say anything this evening. Thank you very much for that tip there from Andrew. Much appreciated. There is the Ima Sef Informações Dúvidas e Agenda Mentos. That's a group on Facebook. That could be quite an asset to people. Thank you very much. And you have to make an effort. So my guess about Lee is correct, and he has made an effort, and that's perhaps partly why he hasn't faced any issues being an expat. The stories I've heard of you and your local community, Lee, have moved me to tears. You're a model in that respect. They're very liberal, immigrating. No one cares that you used to be called Patricia and the operation was quite convincing. I'm sure that's not it. But seriously, says Pete, it's a fantastic place where taking part in community events and integrating are encouraged. Well done, Pete. Thank you for that. I think there's a tick for my building community and integrating locally there. And one way of doing that, look at this. Win-win. Helping at the festa is great fun. So Pete can give you a manual on how to volunteer to run the cocktail bar at your local festa. He's been there and done that, and he's no doubt got the T-shirt, which he could lend you as well. So we've got to Mr. S and in as well. Good evening. And Roy Correa. Good evening to you. Thank you for being here. Now Carl is talking good business. Do some tax planning. Pay the minimum to those politicians. Well, there you go. That's right. By starting a business in Portugal, you can minimize, you can plan well. Roy knows what I'm suggesting there. So thank you for seeing that and picking up on that. Roy, good to see you here. Really enjoy my correspondence with you. And be sure to take in the north of Portugal as well to the OLP from Bob and Viv if you enjoy great Portuguese people and year-round beautiful flora and fauna. And Lee also married to a Portuguese speaker, though he lives in a very Portuguese-speaking area of Lisbon, as well as being called Patricia. João Mendonça, good evening to you. Happy New Year to you as well, Igor Mendes. Lovely to see you. Good evening to you, Sire, as well. João, always good to see you. And Bob and Viv from OLP. We want to go all over, especially the Silver Coast in the north. Well, it looks like OLP will be popping in to see you, Bob and Viv, and me as well. I forget what area you're in. They're in Ponta de Lima if they haven't already said so to you. I do like you sometimes, Munson. Lol. Tonight is what you do well. Well, thank you. Wow. Cheers. We are in Ponta de Lima. There you go. An hour inland and north of Porto. Only 30 minutes from the ocean beaches, have local river beaches, and we're 40 minutes from Spain. All right, Bob and Viv, enough already. They like the Silver Coast. OLP loves the Silver Coast. Stop trying to turn OLP's head. Advice, keep your distance from Portuguese lawyers. There is very little that you... This is not my... In case any Portuguese lawyers are watching, this is not me saying this. This is a certain gentleman with the initials RC. There's very little that you can't do yourself in Portugal. Lawyers are only needed if you need criminal defense or collect debts by legal force. And that still takes a long time. How long does it take to get a case to court here? Is it like 3 or 4 years? Happy New Year, Carl. Simon, good evening to you. I hope you had a good Christmas and New Year. I keep saying I'll have to come down for your meetings in San Martino from up in Nazaré. It's not that far, Simon. What is it, 16 kilometers? Still owe you that beer. When is your next? It was yesterday. I had a flat battery. And you know what? Building community, integrating locally. I had 2 offers to jumpstart me within a few hours. That's the way to do it. And we're at Palmera next Wednesday. Hope to see you there, Simon. And drop me a line, 913-590-303, my WhatsApp number, 913. I'll put it in the chat for anybody who wants to join our meetup. Actually, I better put the Portugal code as well tonight. So 00351 913 590 is my 303. I forgot a bit off the end there. That didn't look right. So that's going in there, Simon. Drop me a line and I'll make sure you're on the alerts for the meetup. Run a meetup in your local area. That's a great way to build community and integrate locally, and do it at a local cafe and get some help from some of the local people. Make friends with the local people. When you're doing your meetup, please don't insulate yourself. I love the T-shirts and the hats and bags. Lee McGrady has started a successful business here, and I pay my taxes from what was a London business. I would far rather pay taxes here, says Pete as well. Nice one, Pete. Thank you. And more importantly, where's that fabulous cocktail bar you've been? Oh, that was you. That was your comment. That's in opposite Samar. And it's the cocktail bar. It's the bar of the hotel opposite Samar. They're not Concha. On the same side of the road as Samar there. Sorry, that's a little bit parochial, but it's a very good cocktail bar, so we need to know that. We want to visit all of your areas. Nice one, OLP, and hit that like button, folks. Great program and vision. Well, thanks, Bob and Viv. Like I said before, this isn't about likes, subscribers. I don't really care for that on YouTube, and it's just as well, quite frankly. But this is about creating community for the long term here in Portugal. And I see you, those of you who have a similar vision, and I'm so glad to know you and to have made your acquaintance. So let's keep on keeping on with that. I think we're going to need each other in the future. I have a vested interest. Cheers to you as well, Simon. So maybe see you at the meetup next week. And certainly let's go and have a cocktail at that cocktail bar there. In San Martino de Porto. So thank you very much for being here. Much appreciated. Actually, if I go back to the beginning of my presentation, I think I've done my best here to make the case for Portugal being a safe, certainly, or safer. I mean, that like I said before, you know, it's all relative, isn't it? And certainly in Portugal, it's safer. And this is where we started tonight. Safe, sociable and sane. We're going to, like I said, we're going to need each other in these coming times, I think. So it's great that it's sociable. It's great that it's safe. And I think, relatively speaking, it's a sane place to be. There's just something about the spirit and soul of the Portuguese people which brings a down-to-earth sanity in these crazy times. I mean, these are crazy times, aren't they? I talk to people at the moment, and the conversations, is this the same for you? You have conversations one-to-one, don't you, at the cafe or the pub, that you just wouldn't have in this sort of public area. It's like there's two worlds, aren't there? There's the, sort of this sort of semi-mainstream where you don't say exactly what's on your mind or your worst fears and those sorts of things. But I think that we're coming to a point of convergence where we just have to call it and tell it like it is. We're coming into some crazy times, I think, with these different situations around the world in terms of conflict, in terms of the economy, in terms of the collapse of the civilization that we've grown up with and known. These are no longer sort of conspiracy theory ideas. That we're seeing this unfold, dissolve, or unravel before our eyes, and we would be wise to do something about it, certainly prepare for it, and see ourselves and our kids into the next bit. As I showed you before, it's time to move on from The Sound of Music and Julie Andrews, and it's time for a bit of Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, a bit more of that sort of attitude and mentality. But one day to return, maybe if not to Maria von Trapp, then this other Julie Andrews character, a bit of Mary Poppins for the future. So thank you for being here. Absolutely agree, Carl, not conspiracy. There you go. Thank you for that. And how are my puppies? How very personal. Wishing they're kittens, actually. The kittens are well. And that's another thing I forgot to mention about moving to Portugal. You will inherit cats. Wishing everyone the best. Cheers, Suze. Good to see you here. And we will leave it there. Reach out if you want to get involved with the community. One clear and obvious way of doing that is to join us at gmpvip.com. And for those who really want to get involved and get in at the deepest level and really be part of things here, whether it be in business networking with the Expat Angels, with the Portugal Immigrant Network, help us grow that. You can do that at the Portugal Club level as well, which you can see on our website. Find out more about that. But gmpvip.com is a great way to support us, and go to the website to find out more about the Portugal Club. You've been amazing. Thank you so much. Take care. Should we play? Let's have a bit of fun now, shall we? Have I still got that? Yes, I have. Let's have some fun with this, and we'll see you in the morning with Savvy Cat Anna as we prepare with a bit of Feel Good Friday fun for the weekend. Mrs. M is going to join us for a little bit of fun tomorrow morning. Take care. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Ciao.